Chess YouTube, welcome back. And breaking news, Arjun Erigaisi, the Indian prodigy, he just invented a brand new chess opening at the 2025 Norway Chess Tournament. And no, I'm not kidding. It's a new opening, and I'm calling it the Indian Tiger. It reminds me of that online meme where the tiger in India jumps out of the grass and attacks the guy on the elephant. Well, in this game right here, Hikaru Nakamura is the guy on the elephant, and Arjun Erigaisi is the tiger about to attack him. All right, in the game, Arjun Erigaisi, 1d4 is the move, then we have d5, c4, and lately, Hikaru's been playing the move c5 nonstop as black. I just don't get it, but Hikaru seems to like it. Instead, in this game, he plays the move c6, heading for the Slav, and this is not one of Hikaru Nakamura's main openings as black. This is very, very strange. All right, here, Arjun goes down the absolute main line. Actually, both players do. Knight f3, knight f6, and then knight c3. White brings out all of the knights. Now, of course, with the pawn on c6, black cannot go knight c6, so black has to do something else to break the symmetry. Now, black's main ideas here are d takes c4, the classical Slav, e6, the semi-Slav, and a6, the Chebanenko Slav, the chameleon Slav. It's got a few different names. Now, which one will Hikaru go for? Well, nowadays, most black players do go for e6, the semi-Slav, but instead, in this game, Hikaru, he takes on c4. This is the old main line of the Slav. All right, now, white goes a4. The idea being black was threatening b5, threatening to hang on to the extra pawn on c4. That is kind of black's whole idea in this mainline Slav. So, white goes a4, clamping down on b5. If black goes b5, he loses a pawn to a takes, then knight takes. All right, now, black goes bishop f5. That is the main benefit of the classical Slav over the semi-Slav. In the semi-Slav, black goes for that fast e6 and therefore locks in the light squared bishop. Now, on the other hand, in this line, black still has the pawn on e7 and therefore he can go bishop f5 like this. Now here, white's got a few different ideas. The easy line for white is e3, regaining the pawn, but white does not get that much of an edge there, and black is relatively fine. If white's playing more ambitiously, the move here that Arjun played, and the main move, is knight to e5. Now, the benefit of this move, first of all, you do threaten to recapture with the knight, but that seems a little bit weird. Why would that be the key benefit? Well, the other benefit, and this is huge, white sets up the idea of playing f3 and then e4, gaining space in the center, and that is possible because the knight is no longer on the f3 square. So how will Hikaru Nakamura defend? Well, he goes down the main line as well. He plays knight bd7, challenging the knight on e5. Therefore, white has to move the knight, and the only good move here for white is knight takes c4. Now, Hikaru, queen to c7, also a good move, trying to control the e5 square. Hikaru is thinking about the idea of e5 right here. That would be a very good freeing break, and if black can get that move off under good circumstances, he will be fine. Now, here, white goes g3. This is by far the best move here. The point being, the old plan of f3 and e4 is no longer as strong, as if you go f3, black can go e5 right away, getting a fantastic game. So instead, g3 is played with the idea of bishop f4. And of course, the bishop there on f4 would be supported by the g-pawn. And beyond that, bishop g2 and castles is also on the agenda. And white's getting a very harmonious setup here. Therefore, black here, if he wants to go e5, he kind of has to do it right now. So e5 is the move, breaking in the center. And don't worry, the new opening is coming up in just a couple of moves. All right, from here, white takes on e5. Black takes back. Then white goes bishop f4. Pinning that knight on e5 to the queen on c7. So far, again, very standard stuff. Now, black here plays the main move, Hikaru, knight fd7, supporting the knight on the e5 square. Now, this is where things get very interesting. The main move here for white, and you can guess what it is, just bishop g2, developing. And from there, the lines are very complicated. Black often goes, for example, g5 there. The point being, if you take the pawn, then the knight on e5 is no longer pinned, and black can capture on c4. The lines are very complicated, starting with bishop g2 and then g5. However, instead, in this position, Arjun Erigaisi plays a move that has never been played by two grandmasters during a blitz game, online game, grandmaster game, you name it. According to my database, this has never, ever been played by two grandmasters before. And the move here is h4. This is the Indian Tiger, Arjun Erigaisi, clamping down on the g5 square, preemptively stopping any sort of g5 advance from black. And this move is actually very, very deep. Beyond h4, instead of intending bishop g2, white wants to go bishop h3, challenging the light-squared bishop on f5, and he's allowing black to take on h3, and then white takes back with the rook. It's a really, really sophisticated idea. I mean, Arjun Erigaisi busting out the brand new chess opening right here. All right, here, what should black do? It turns out rook d8 is the best defense against the new opening, but instead here, black goes f6. The idea being, maybe he wants to go g5. More importantly, he's also supporting the knight on the e5 square, basically making the knight a rock-solid piece in the center. But Arjun, he continues with his plan. Bishop h3, challenging the black bishop, on f5. Now here, Hikaru, he takes on f3. White takes back, and then rook to d8, lining up the rook with the queen on the d1 square. Really impressive stuff. All right. Arjun, he sees this. Queen to c2, getting out of the attack, a logical move. And now Hikaru, queen to c8. What is the idea behind this move? Well, first of all, you step out of the pin, the attack pin. Yeah, out of the pin of the bishop here. The bishop no longer pinning that knight on e5 to the queen. Beyond that, the queen lines up with the x-ray attack on the rook on the h3 square. Therefore, if black were to go, say, knight b6, he would have a double attack on the knight on c4 as well as the rook. This is a game-ending threat right here. I mean, white has to respond. What is white going to do? Well, the main idea here is you have to move this knight somewhere. I mean, beyond this threat, the knight on e5 is also targeting it. Therefore, it has to go somewhere. If you take on e5, black takes back, and black is doing just fine. Again, he has a discovered attack on the rook. So instead, white has to move it somewhere. In the game, Arjun, knight d2 is the move. He goes back to d2, and from here, the knight does have access to other squares like b3, e4, f3, and so on. All right, here, Hikaru, what should he be doing? Well, he still has to castle. I mean, even in a new opening like this on move 15, you still have to worry about your king safety. Therefore, the safest plan for Hikaru is likely bishop e7 or b4 and then castles, just following basic chess principles here. But if he does that, Arjun, he might just leave his rook on the h-file and go for the alpha 0 attack, h5, h6, and so on. And, you know, that could be very dangerous. Instead of all of that, Hikaru goes knight c5. So what is the idea behind this? Well, it's not immediately threatening anything beyond the rook on the h3 square. So Arjun goes back with the rook, rook to h1, and all of those threats are no longer possible, and white does seem to be stabilizing with quite a significant advantage. All right, Hikaru, queen to e6 is the move. Centralizing his queen, the e6 is certainly a good square for the queen here. And now Arjun, he's got to figure out what he wants to do with this king. Do you want to leave it on the e1 square? Do you want to go, say, king f1 to g1 or even g2 with the fianchetto of the king? Or do you want to castle long? I mean, all of these ideas are possible for Arjun. It just depends on what he wants to do. And in the game, he castles long. So this is how you know he's in a fighting mood. I mean, castling long here is actually kind of a risky decision. The pawn on the a4 square is very vulnerable. The c-file is open, and black will be able to get an attack going with, say, a6, b5, ideas like that at some point. Of course, when you castle long, I mean, black cannot castle long. His king's going to be stuck on e8 or castling short, or maybe, you know, going to f7. Wherever the king goes, white is going to be able to get an attack going with, say, h5, h6, maybe f3, g4, g5, and so on. So we're about to get a very, very double-edged attack in this new opening chess game. All right, black, rook d4 is the move. Activating the rook on d4, it looks very active. However, the rook could be in trouble on d4. Arjun, king to b1 is the move, sliding his king over. Of course, black is putting pressure on this pawn, but for now, it is defended. And here, Hikaru finds a very strong move, knight g4. Look at this, pressuring f2, and it's actually not so easy to find a good way to defend. Of course, you can't go f3 here, as then the knight still jumps into f2, forking both of your rooks. You can't allow that. So what should he do? Well, you can go, say, rook h to f1, but that's a very passive move, and you lose a lot of your attacking potential with the h-pawn on the h-file. So that might be best, but it's also not a move that Arjun would like to make. Arjun, of course, is a super, super, super aggressive player. So here, he ignores the f-pawn and instead counterattacks on the rook. I mean, a classical Arjun-style move here. So Hikaru, I mean, This is where you got to sit down and calculate what should Hikaru be doing here. Well, he finds the best sequence. First of all, he addresses the weakness of this rook. He just takes on d1 with check. Very good move. White takes back, and then Hikaru jumps in with the knight and takes the f2 pawn. So Arjun, he did not lose the exchange. There is no fork on two rooks as there's just one rook left on the board for white. However, he did lose this pawn, and black here is just up material. All right, Arjun, knight d4. He jumps in, targets the queen. He's got to get his pieces going. Of course, the one good thing Arjun has here is king safety. Black's king is so much more vulnerable on e8 than white's on b1. It hasn't even castled, and black's kingside pieces are still not in the game. Meanwhile, white has all of his pieces on good squares. So Arjun has to attack, and he has to attack literally right now. All right, black, queen to c4. Effectively pinning this knight to the queen. No, it's not really pinned, but if the knight moves, then black trades queens, and black's king will be perfectly safe. Therefore, that knight effectively pinned in this game. All right, Arjun, rook d2, getting the rook out of the attack of the knight. Very good. Now we have knight to e4, the knight jumping back, and then we have knight takes e4, queen takes c2, the queens come off, king takes c2, rook takes may have been a little more accurate, but I digress. And then knight takes e4, winning back that piece and pressuring the rook. So now he did enter an endgame where black seems to be much better. He has the extra pawn and so on, the slightly better pawn structure. Black here has 1, 2 pawn islands versus the 1, 2, 3 of white. That does give black this slightly better pawn structure, but keep in mind, black still hasn't castled. His bishop and his rook are still out of the game, and that is still going to give Arjun Erigaisi a window of opportunity to get the attack going in this new chess opening, the Indian Tiger. All right, rook d3, the rook gets out of the attack. Knight to c5, attacks the rook. Rook to e3, hits the king on the e8 square. The king is forced off its original square. It goes to f7, likely the safest square. Then we have b4, attacking the knight. Now, very importantly, the pawn on a4 is hanging. Black can take it, but that would be a big mistake. If black takes on a4 like this, then the rook swoops over, hits the knight, and it will gobble up the pawn on a7 behind it, and white would get a pretty big initiative on the queen side. Therefore, instead, knight d7 was chosen in the game by Hikaru. Now we have rook d3. The rook slides over. Knight to b6, again, targeting this pawn, but again, you still can't take, as the rook still has access to the a3 square here. Now we have king b3. The king jumps up, a6, e4, Arjun pressing in the center, bishop d7, black finally getting his rook back into the game. Then we have knight to f5. The knight jumps forward and targets the bishop on e7. So far, so good. All right, black, g6. Putting the question to the knight, do you really want to take on e7, or were you just bluffing? Well, it turns out taking on e7 is the right move, but again, Arjun, this guy just loves a complicated fight, and he certainly finds the most complicated move at the chessboard right here. He plays the move a5, targeting the knight immediately on the queen side, ignoring the knight on the king side. And Hikaru says, all right, Arjun, I'm game, let's play ball. He takes on f5, white takes on b6, and now we certainly have a complicated endgame in this new chess opening, the Indian Tiger. All right, rook d8 is the move. The rook slides over and pressures the white rook on d3. Now we have rook takes d8, bishop takes d8, and then bishop to c7. The bishop flies in, and of course, this bishop is poisoned. If black takes here, white takes back, and that pawn will promote on the next move. So a little cheeky idea, but of course, Hikaru is just not going to fall for this nonsense. Instead, bishop e7 is chosen. Then we have e takes f5, and then c5. Black gets some counterplay. We have b takes, and then bishop takes c5. Now, in the end, white might be a tiny smidge better. He's got the slightly better pawn structure, but overall, the game is roughly balanced. And, you know, it should end in a draw, but certainly there's a lot that can happen in this endgame. Let's fast forward. g4, h5, black trying to break up the white pawn structure. He is going on the offensive. We have g takes h5. Now these pawns are very, very weak, but of course Arjun is temporarily up a pawn. Black's idea is likely king g7, then h6, then trying to gobble up these pawns like this. He also has other ideas like bishop f2, targeting this pawn right away, as he did in the game. Now we have king c4, bishop takes, bishop d6, a5, king b5, clamping down on this pawn here. King g7. The king now begins its march to capture this light squared pawn. We have king takes a5, king h6, king b5, king takes, bishop e7, targeting this pawn. It is defended, but it is good to have some pressure on that pawn. And then king to g5. Now, king c5. Arjun's idea is to go here, and then win this pawn. And there's not a whole lot that black can do to stop it. On the other hand, Arjun is defenseless against the threat of king takes f5. Here, Hikaru, he gives the check on f2. Bishop f2 hits the king, king d6, bishop takes b6, winning that pawn. Then we have king to e6, attacking the pawn on f6. Now, bishop d4 defends the pawn, and then bishop b4 retreats. Now, bishop e5, bishop d2 hits the king, king g4, bishop b4, b5, bishop e7, again targeting the pawn on the f6 square, king g5, bishop b4, bishop b2, bishop d2 hits the king on g5, king g4, bishop b4, bishop e5, bishop e7, again targeting the pawn, king g5, bishop b4, bishop b2, and both sides do kind of continue this dance for a little while. Bishop d2 hits the king, king to g4. Finally, Arjun forcing the king away from the defense of the pawn on g6. And from here, I mean, this pawn is as good as gone sooner or later. Arjun sharking around, forcing it back, and eventually he's able to win this pawn on f6. Of course, all is not lost for Hikaru. He pushes the b pawn, b4. It is now an all-out race between these respective pawns. Now here, white takes on c3. We have bishop takes b3, or c3, b takes c3, and then f6. These pawns are going to promote. There's nothing that can stop them. Let's see what happens. c2, f7, c1 queen, f8 queen. Then here, what's going to happen? Queen to c6 hits the king, queen d6, and here Hikaru, he trades queens and sends the game, the classical game, to the Armageddon game, which I will cover in a later video later this day. So stay tuned for that. It's coming out this Sunday as well. Wow, what a game between Arjun Erigaisi and Hikaru Nakamura. I mean, Arjun busting out the new chess opening, the Indian Tiger, with the move 11h4. I mean, going against conventional wisdom, not going in bishop g2, instead clamping down on g5 preemptively, setting up the idea of bishop h3, an idea that I was simply not aware of at all. And I do study chess openings quite a bit. I mean, I'm building, multiple chess openings courses for white and black in my free community. The link is down below in the description for the video. But I digress. I know my chess openings pretty well, but this idea right here of h4, bishop h3, I mean, I wasn't even aware of the possibility of that. Arjun Erigaisi running laps around me as usual, but I mean, really, really impressive stuff right here. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you thought of the new opening, the Indian Tiger. Do you like that name? Do you think it should name something else? A lot of you don't like it when I name openings, but I mean, I'm still doing it. I'm naming it the Indian Tiger, so, tough luck. Deal with it. But anyways, comment down below, smash that like button, and as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond, and I'll see you in the next video.